Okay, welcome to people joining this live stream. We're starting a little late. Um, we actually have a triple header of live streams here. This is language completeness and consistency. Then I'm doing a history of science and technology Q&A, and then we have a language development meeting after that. I'm being kept very busy because I'm operating with people filling in for scheduling for me, and the people who are filling in are overqualified, and they're making me more busy than I usually would be. So anyway, there it is. All right, let's start off here. Excluded and include. What's it? An included.
Yes, that's just a typo. The symbol is correct in the system.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I was going to write draft pages, and I got busy with something. Sorry, so they aren't. But
we discussed this last time, right?
We discussed this last time, right? And I wanted to point out that having these options is useful independently of the edge case of system and how do we distinguish system things, right? So, for example, you can say, included context goes to automatic, which will only save things in the current context, or included context goes to my context backtick star, which will only save everything in a family of related contexts.
What about all?
That's the default.
Okay. So
right. So
and it should really be inherited. I mean, sorry, automatic rather than inherited for the current context only.
I suppose it could be inherited. That strikes me as a bit strange, but I can't quantify that off the top of my head.
Right. I agree. It's not quite right, inherited. But okay, so
didn't we also discuss the option of all the contexts that appear literally in the given expression?
Oh, right. Yes, that's why it was automatic. So for full definition, you just give a symbol right. But for some other functions, you might have a whole expression, and then automatic picks up all the contexts that appear literally in the expression you gave it.
Okay. Okay, I mean, sounds fine. Okay, what is the question here?
Right. So then there was the question of, should system be in the default excluded list? And then you had this idea of, well, we should somehow mark down values that are created after a certain point and only pull in those. And so
that's all very complicated and not for go ahead. What are you going to say?
Right. So Tom is here to discuss the practicality of that because he wasn't here last time. So
okay. Well, the idea is pretty simple. I mean, the idea is to be able to know when an assignment was made and to be able to decide that assignment was made during initialization and it'll be remade, by another system, or that thing was made. I mean, it's really, what is the provenance of the assignment? I mean, is it conceivable that in the down value list or in some aspect of a symbol, we could actually store metadata associated with the assignment?
Down values are metadata in a way.
I know, but they don't store the time it was made or the.
It could yeah. I mean, sure, it could do all of this.
I mean, if you have a tight loop, a function that's storing a million values, it's not something you're going to want. But in the case, I mean, if there was a way of storing even, the first down, I don't know exactly what the right heuristic is, but a way of, I mean, perhaps something you could switch off or I mean, something which gives you a sense of this thing was added by the user on purpose and should be preserved. This thing was added as part of initialization and will be regenerated. Because that's the thing we need to understand, right? There's no reason to transport a giant pile of random initialization stuff that, let's say you're sending code to somebody, right? No reason to explicitly send code the person's going to have anyway.
Right. I mean, right. So I would say they're sort of
tricky because you might load packlets later. I mean, the down value, it's not just a question of the time it was loaded at. It's not like after a certain period you can switch over and it's all user stuff. I mean, that's not how it works.
No, that's you're right. That's not correct. But this whole question of, is it user added or is it a system thing that will be automatically replaced? That's what we need to know.
I mean, that problem came into being when we started to use top-level Wolfram code for ourselves, right? And so now we have this ugly read-protected attribute to hide our own mess. And so I think it's, yes, I mean, originally we promised that user code would come first in the evaluation. That is no longer true. And I think this whole question, all of these questions we should address at some point.
Well, okay, so one of the things you're suggesting is that rather than using read protected as a proxy indication of system added code, that maybe we should have a more explicit way of indicating that.
Yeah, because read protected doesn't distinguish between our code and user code.
Yeah, well, neither does sort of clear and things like that. You might want just to clear your additions or something as well.
Well,
right.
Okay,
So,
so
I think what we would need is like a start system mode, right? A function that says, okay, mark all these things as system things, and they go in a separate table that's accessed last. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, the other point is that read protected.
Two things there. I mean,
read protected is a symbol-based thing. What we want is an assignment-based way of indicating these assignments for this thing came from the system. These were user added. Right? Read protected applies only to a whole symbol.
Yeah, that's
yes,
that's all true.
But we also want this new attribute to influence the order of matching, right? So
Do we really want to do that?
I'm not sure we want to do that.
That's a massive change.
okay. I mean, my original suggestion many years ago, which was probably too complicated, is to have two symbol tables, one for us and one for users. So we had a clear distinction between the two cases.
I think the problem is that us is more complicated. What about a third-party package? How us is us?
Well, I mean, there's other ways than having two symbol tables. I mean, you can just mark all the symbols as being an us symbol or a
no, but we're saying it isn't a symbol. It's not the whole symbol.
No, I'm agreeing, but I'm just saying the two symbol table thing isn't.
Right, but I'd like to point out the us. It's like, oh, we have an experimental project that happens to be done by a person at our company. Is that us? Is that not us? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think it's a clear distinction.
But also, I'm forgetting what the example was. But this came up because of system symbols that are expected to be used, given down values or own values by users, or format values or something like that.
Right, well, dollar
so the question became,
or derivative are both examples.
right.
Derivative might be the one that I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, look. First thing is get included context, excluded context working. That's fine. It's all agreed. Pack and send. The next issue is what are our objectives? We want to cut the crud out of the autocompletes. We want to prevent save definitions from saving irrelevant stuff. Those are the two known objectives. Are there other objectives?
I think those are the two. Certainly, those are the two main ones.
Okay, fine. All right. So Okay, so for the autocomplete,
So certainly
Well-
we want to complete everything that's in system. So that's an argument that we shouldn't consider system and included, an internal context in the sense of,
well, absolutely. But
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that both of those uses are a per symbol rather than a per assignment use.
right.
I mean, there's a different thing, which is like a reset. Can we roll things back? Let's say we have a kernel, and honestly, in the modern world, it's like the cost of restarting a kernel, in a container, in a whatever, should be low enough. You just don't care. If there's something, if you don't like what's there, throw it away and start again, rather than worrying about micro resetting, clearing these 5 definitions here type thing. Does that make sense? So I think we're not hearing an argument. I mean, I think it would be interesting to be able to tell what was a user added change versus system added change, but I'm not sure it's worth it. And now, really, the question is, I think we just messed up our heuristics for the autocompletes, and those can be fixed. So long as we know, look, the main issue is, was a context brought in by a user, or was it entrained by some complicated chain of packlet loads that was not under, what the user doesn't care about? Look, I don't understand why it isn't really quite straightforward to decide what to put in the autocompletes. Basically, to my mind, if it's not on the context path, it probably shouldn't be in the autocomplete. You see what I'm saying? When should a symbol? I don't know whether we have the right people to discuss this. When should a symbol be in the autocomplete when it isn't on the context path?
Well, symbols I think are only ever on the in the autocomplete when naked symbols are only ever on the completion list if they are.
I know, but there are qualified things with all kinds of look. If I just
well,
go,
yeah, well, that's because the right. That's because.
What? It's because it's bugs, probably.
It's not bugs, right? It's because because the system is designed to allow you to also type in fully qualified symbols.
I understand, but the whole point is, my point is, we don't want to offer spelunking by default, right? I don't think we should offer it by default, but we have the wrong set of people here to discuss this. I don't think we should put in the list of autocompletes symbols most of the time, unless you're explicitly using context, unless it knows that you use that context. I don't think we should offer, I mean, maybe that's the heuristic. If you use that context once, then it will, in that session, for example, then it will continue showing you autocompletes for that context. Otherwise, it will only...
What do you mean use that context?
It was a context not on your context path. So I explicitly typed in, algebra backtick, I don't know whether what's a good context that somebody knows? Internal, I don't know. What's a good? Okay, there we go. Okay, all right. So this is now auto-completing a context name,
right?
Which I suppose is okay. All right, so let's say I do that, and I type A. All right, fine.
Yeah, I would expect this, right?
Yeah, this is right. There's nothing wrong with this. But now, let's type ab square. Okay, well, that's probably correct.
Right. I mean, so far as I know, the symbols only show up in auto completions if they're on $context path.
Or
okay,
you have type.
So if you did less internal backtick, or
no, I don't want to do that. No, I do not want to do that. But
or less experimental, right? And then you'll get the experimental things in.
Okay, look, maybe there isn't a problem here. I mean, maybe I see this problem more than most people do because I have DocuTools loaded a lot, which has all kinds of random things on the context path. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
I was going to complain again about the opposite problem where I'm trying to debug something in alpha and I don't remember the name of the private symbol, and autocomplete refuses to go inside backtick private backtick.
Right, which you can turn off. That's a
I don't know why it refuses to do it. Listen, we have the wrong people to discuss this.
I know it. I know why it refuses to do it, and I'm telling you that the reason it refuses to do it is because you complained about it. So Tom turned that off by default.
Okay, so it's probably a mistake.
Set a front end option in order to allow that.
Okay, so listen. The thing is, if it isn't on the context path, it should not show it by default. If it is something that you start typing in, I don't see why you shouldn't show it. It is not obvious to me that if I type internal in this case here, right, that how many private contexts do I want to see there? I don't think I need to see them. I don't think I need to see anything nested. At this point, I'm just auto-completing. So just auto-complete me to the end of that part of the context.
Right, and that's all it will do.
Yeah, that's what it does right now.
Now try the following. Do system backtick private backtick.
Well, what's this?
Private.
Private backtick.
Right. So you have the option. You're on the default option, which hides that, which was something.
Right. So this is wrong. This is wrong. This was a fix to the wrong thing. This was the wrong fix to the other problem that we had. We should change this. But let's please bring this up in a user assistance meeting, okay, with the right people. But I think it's wrong right now. I think we took a sledgehammer to this because we couldn't get the heuristic right, and what's there is wrong. Let's move on.
Okay.
Do we know now what to do with system?
I guess my inclination is to not consider it internal by default, because that is the more compatible view. But
what do you mean not consider it internal? We can't, if there's a system function that has code. I mean, is it the case that we have adopted the discipline of setting read protected whenever it is a blob of code that would be, again, the reason to not save the definition is because it's going to get reproduced again on the destination end, right?
Well, I mean, the problem is we have both cases in system, right? So for example, if you make changes to, right, if you assign definitions to, say, derivative, then you probably want to save them. But if if your definition pulls in $time zone, right? Well, $time zone is not protected because we want users to set it. But then if you pull it in, then when that's restored, you're going to have the
wrong time zone.
Wrong time zone.
Probably, yes.
Right. And so the question is, which is worse, to sometimes pull in unnecessary things or sometimes not pull in things that the user wanted saved?
Is the symbol set, the system symbol set that we need to treat specially, small enough that we could just hack it together?
Probably. Let's look at that. Let's look at system symbols that realistically, I mean, let's ask that question. That's a good question, and maybe that could be either just now in documentation and in the future some kind of attribute.
Right. So
I mean, let's pick a random area. Okay. It's just like if somebody resets something to do with desolve, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it would be terrible if we didn't pull that over. We didn't save it.
Well, we wouldn't, because desolve is protected.
Okay, so here's a question. Which symbols do I need to run this? Which symbols do not have protected? So if I say names, whoops. Oh, shoot. I am running something which is going to which is refusing to stop. Roman, I have a parallel thing. I'm trying to interrupt it, and it refuses to interrupt.
Well, I mean, that depends a lot on what you're doing. I mean, because
that's what I'm doing.
I mean, if those things take minutes or
they do
longer than now.
Well, and I killed the remote kernels because, but it still won't release itself.
Yes. Now, I mean, you have seen that earlier that there is a state where if it's trying to read from a remote kernel and you interrupt it, then you cannot interrupt it. That's this dreaded interrupt during link read, which I'm not responsible for.
Well, but how is it going to get fixed?
Well, it's apparently not. It's apparently by design, but all I know is the only way to get out of it is to kill the kernel.
Sounds like that's something we should pick up somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean,
that's John Ford's territory.
John and Todd, because this has to do with the MathLink contract.
Right. Fair enough. But I mean, the bottom line is it's causing one to have non-interruptible parallel stuff, and that's bad. But okay, so now I can probably actually run my name star, and oh boy, okay. So do I really? My God, what's going on here? Do I really need to do this? So I think I can do attributes on the string name, can't I?
Yep. I just ran it. It's just that the whole thing is too large to send it in chat.
Okay, but so it's. I mean, it's free queue.
Oh yes, free queue.
Free queue protected. Some of these are bugs.
And read protected, right?
No, just protected.
Okay, right. So a bunch of those are things we can ignore because, right, they're typesetting, right? They're operators without built-in meaning. So if the user
gives some meaning, then we want to keep it.
Right.
Okay, but so some of these might be. I mean, why auto match isn't protected? I have no idea.
I don't even know what auto match is.
Probably an option. I mean, look at this, the Birnbaum-Saunders distribution. This is kind of embarrassing. There are bugs here. They're just straight bugs. So it looks like the statistics team doesn't know to do this for some function. So let's send this to QA. To me, eyeballing this.
Yeah,
like
the
rebuild
number of
Packlet data,
Yeah.
I wonder if this is an auto-loading issue that they, these haven't auto-loaded yet or some such.
And they have stubs, but nothing else or something. Anyway, look, this is a QA issue. But to me, the immediate thought is it would be okay to say we will save system stuff if the system is not if the symbol is not protected, and we will not otherwise.
Okay.
And that would mean we save derivative, we don't save, other things. If you okay, so the question is, if you dynamically unprotected something, then maybe we should save that.
Right.
Okay, so it's like we just look at it, we see if it's protected. Let's try that, but let's get QA to look through this and get this cleaned up.
Okay.
Okay, hold applied.
Right. So there are two sets of issues with this idea. I'm not convinced that this is super useful, but you've mentioned variants of this idea multiple times. So one is the language design, right? We need to somehow hold sub-values. So the question is, so there's the language design, like, do we just have like a sub-values inherited holding? I mean, that's not the right name, but something which you'd need to apply both this attribute and hold all, hold first, hold rest, and that would apply both to the symbol and to the subvalues? Or do we have like 3, hold all subvalues, hold subvalue first, hold subvalue rest? And does that even make sense when you're talking about sort of multiple levels of subvalues? And then there are the implementation issues that.
Well, so one very obvious issue is hold applied f, x, y. What does it hold?
Right.
Well, it's going to apply. It's going to hold x and y for sure. I mean, whatever happens to x, the same will happen to y. I think that's inevitable.
Okay, so let me tell you my perspective on this. What hold does, having now spent a bunch of time studying evaluation orders in these things like combinators and so on, we basically have 2 evaluation schemes. One is depth first, the other is essentially breadth first, which is the hold case. In other words, it either goes and evaluates, this is an evaluation control, essentially, right? Which order is the evaluation going to happen in, if I'm making sense? And I know that there's a whole zoo of different evaluation orders, which people do not understand very well. But there's a zoo of different ones. And in fact, there's sort of an arbitrary collection of what is evaluated first. And maybe the way we should think about this is a different language design mechanism, which is more, I mean, I don't know whether this makes any sense, but let's imagine that we had something like controlled evaluate, okay? And then we said f, x, y. And then we said, this is the order in which I want these to be evaluated. Part 2, followed by part 1, followed by the head, followed by all, meaning the actual function. Just as a, as an alternative idea. That
Right.
it's a
Yes, well, I would say this is sort of a much cleaner idea. I mean, I'm not sure, right? I mean, I think we need some sort of family of rules, right? Named families.
yes. Yes, and in fact, we could.
Useful, but yes, I think this is a much sort of cleaner design because, right?
I mean, this is kind of amusing. We could actually do things like this. We could actually use the named evaluation schemes.
So by outermost, you mean top rather than bottom? Top down.
Right. Well, so just to give a sense of this, let me see if I can find it. I admit that this is very obscure stuff. This is combinators. Someplace here I talked about.
This is also like tree visitors.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it is tree traversal.
It's more than that. It's not quite tree traversal. It has some other tentacles to it.
There's a tree traversal implicit in your leftmost, outermost. But you're right. Yes, there's.
Okay, leftmost, outermost, depth first, leftmost, outermost, etc., etc., etc. I think I have a table here of some of the common ones. I mean, these are. This, by the way, these are multi-way systems that show all possible updating orders, of which there are many, right? And leftmost, outermost, and so on is just one that can be labeled easily. Here we go. There's some of the zoo. Okay?
Should we have a non-deterministic?
Well, that's also a possibility, right? I mean, so but this, do you understand that this is an ordering? These are possible part numbers, okay?
Yep.
And this is which one to do first. Honestly, this does make the most sense. It's just to give that list of part numbers and just basically give it in this form here, or give a rule. Okay, so this is an interesting idea. Okay, this is an interesting idea. Let's say that we said ordered evaluate, let's say, or something. Okay, and then we have an expression here. This is actually finally an idea that makes some sense. okay, so we say ordered evaluate, and then we have an expression here, and then we basically have a part function, a part sorting function. And basically what happens is we find, without evaluating expr, we find all of its parts, all the parts that appear in expr. Okay? Then this thing here sorts those parts in order and says which one should be evaluated first and so on. See what I'm saying? It gives the evaluation order.
Right.
Based on part numbers.
But you don't just evaluate atoms, you evaluate whole things.
No. But it's
Right.
part
So,
numbers.
right. So what happened? But what happens if the evaluation of a part sort of changes the part?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, right. Changes the part. Well, I think there's a whole. If one reads what's written here, there's some discussion of this.
I mean, some of them can be done recursively, right? Then it's not a problem. But if you always look at the whole list of parts, then you would have to reevaluate that ordering function after each step.
Right, but I think that there's a sense in which, for some of these orderings, there will never be a sub-ordering, so to speak. In other words, the thing at the top of that tree, if you say evaluate the thing at the top of a particular tree, it's like then you're doing everything underneath it. See what I'm saying? If you say do part 2, then part 2, 1 and part 2, 2, they are sort of grandfathered or something in. They are evaluated before 2 is evaluated. You always are evaluating the subtree of a given part. In order to evaluate a part, you always evaluate its subtree anyway. And so the only way that you can have a non-standard ordering is if you go subtree before full tree, if you see what I mean. So in other words, if my ordering function said, I want to do part 2, 1, then part 2, 2, then part 2, it's all good.
Yeah, right. But if you put the 2 first, we'd have to delete the 2, 1 and 2, 2 because
exactly nothing would happen. Those would have been already done.
Yep.
Actually, I like this very much. This might be finally, after 40 years, because I've been sort of meaning to do, it might actually be a way to do controlled evaluation. Wow, that would be cool. Wow.
So would that second argument in like full generality be like a full tree?
Yeah, it'd be a list of part numbers.
I mean, because I could imagine that, I want to evaluate part 2 before part 1. But within that, I want to do, the second one before the first part again. Which I guess you can still do.
Wait a second. The thing is, in this particular thing, this is a one pass. This is what it would do is hold expr and start poking at expr and saying, evaluate this piece, evaluate that piece.
Right. No, I guess what I was thinking would be specified as like 2, 2, comma, 2, 1, comma, 2, comma, 1.
That's fine. That would be perfectly fine.
So, okay. Ignore me.
Okay. We probably want the same thing also for replacement, rule replacement, right? Not only for evaluation.
You mean /dot?
Yes. I mean, well, some variant of /dot, yes.
Well, that's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, this might be finally the solution of traversal order.
Yes,
we've been, and map could do the same thing. I mean, map needs a traversal order as well. Traversal order is the general.
This sort of suggests that maybe what we need is not a new function, but a new spec, if you will, like traversal order of blah that we could stick into map and
exactly
replace. And
well, you're suggesting that there's a traversal order wrapper around an expression, as opposed to an option to map for traversal order. And I agree that a traversal order wrapper makes more sense because it is referring to that expression.
well, I was suggesting it not around the expression, but around the level spec, right? Because the level spec is a kind of traversal.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, something like that. All right, this is a very interesting idea. All right, I have to go.
Okay, I mean,
is this a very simple thing?
No. I mean,
Great.
it's a concise summary, but right, it's about temporary files, like sort of less temporary
Okay.
than the ones we were talking about on Monday, but less temporary than things you just stick in /temp, because, for example, you might want it to be for the duration of the session.
Okay. I need to go.
Okay.
Good stuff. All right. Talk to you all soon.